Hello and welcome to Mindset Mondays with DTK. This is episode number, oh my God, 188 in an ongoing series of live broadcasts. Do me a favor, if you will, take a quick moment and press share underneath this video. I would love you to invite your friends, your colleagues, your people to join the broadcast. Man, the more we have involved in the conversation, the better and the richer the conversation becomes. And also, let me know where you're connecting from. I've marveled at how far flung the folk who are joining this broadcast really are. Um, so I've had a blast with this broadcast or this episode, um, mostly because we'll look at it this way: 188 weeks. So far, I've had 3 misses. And what I mean by misses is that I've been doing Mindset Mondays with DTK for these live broadcasts for 3.5 years. Now, there were 2 intentional broadcasts missed. When we were in Africa, um, Elaine was very clear. She said, please don't make me deal with you trying to get a solid internet connection while we're in the middle of the bush in Botswana or Zimbabwe. So that was fair. And so I didn't broadcast on those days. That was the December and January just before COVID. But I've had 3 misses, meaning there are 3 broadcasts where I didn't get the email out on the Thursday morning in time. Frankly, Wednesday afternoon this week, I totally flaked on it and it didn't come out. But I'm noticing that as I sat down to write the email this morning to set up this broadcast, I've I focused on the 3 failures, not the 185 times I nailed it. So I'll share with you the quote that I'm playing with today is: compassion for myself is the most powerful healer of them all. Again, compassion for myself is the most powerful healer of them all. And yeah, I mean, it was divinely timed that today or this week was one of the days that I bonked it. But then again, 98.4% success rate. That's a pretty damn good average for anyone, let alone somebody with notable ADHD. 98.4 success. And I see this all the time, right? Not only just with myself, that so many folk frame things through the lens of their failure rather than the lens of success, the lens of the times they screw it up rather than the lens of how many times they nailed it. I know that when I read the 4 agreements the first time, one of the things I noticed was the more that I integrated those 4 agreements and living them into my world, there was a period of time where I became intolerant of any time that I backslid, any time that I was taking things personally, any time that I was not impeccable with my word, any time that I was making assumptions, any time that I wasn't doing my best, or worse, that I was trying to live somebody else's version of my best. And I could be in a place of taking 10 steps forward and a half a step back, and all I focused on was that half step back. It's a natural ebb and flow of our world. 2 steps forward, 1 step back, many steps forward, a few steps back. That's what happens when we're creating new habits, new ways of being, of doing, of thinking, of feeling, when we're replacing things in our world that don't serve with things in our world that do serve. And it's amazing how often we focus on the slips rather than the gains. And I got curious because we do that with other folk, meaning that we also look at, let me step back because I think this is a curse of the idea of continuous quality improvement and constantly looking at how we can improve things. The downside is We've gotten so used to looking for where things are broken so we can figure out how to fix them, where things are not as efficient as they could be so we can look at expanding the efficiency, that we walk around this world, and this is super true in parenting, looking for the slips so we can address those, the breaks so we can fix them, the failures so we can rectify them. And it creates a culture of pointing out the things that are wrong instead of noting the things that are right. I had a CEO that was part of a group with me many, many, many years ago. And one of the things he was talking about is how much the feedback he had gotten back from a 360 within the company was that his team, particularly the leadership team, was angry because it seemed like this guy, all the CEO was doing was correcting them. Everything they said, he came up with a correction or a change. And in our peer group, when we asked him about it, he said, "No, no, I love what they're doing. I'm merely looking for how to make them better." But the impact of his leadership wake was toxic because everybody felt like all he was doing was correcting them. All he was doing was pointing out what was wrong. And it didn't matter that he loved 90%, 95%, 99% of what they were saying, what they were bringing, what they were presenting. What he focused on, as evidenced by what he was responding to, how he was responding, was what was broken, what was not right. One of the things we suggested to him as a group was start off the conversation after they brought you something with, "What I like about that is," simply responding with something positive first, and then add, "And I'm noticing this," or "Here's what we could add," or "Here's how we can expand or change or improve." And definitely not, "Oh, I love that, but you screwed this part up." That's another conversation. We've talked about "but" as an energy killer, as an energy drainer, as a truth teller in these podcasts or these conversations before. Here's the thing. When he listened through the lens of what I like about that is, or what's powerful about that is, it changed the energy in which he was listening. It changes the way he responded, and it changes the way all of his comments were received, both the positive and the negative. And flipping that again, the way we treat others with compassion, for example, or without, looking for something positive or looking for something negative, the way we treat others is a stark reflection of how we treat ourselves. Imagine the CEO, the internal conversations he had all day long, constantly pointing out what was wrong, what was broken, what was not good in the way he was behaving, thinking, feeling, doing. Again, the way we treat others is a stark reflection of how we treat ourselves. When we choose to show compassion to those around us, it becomes easier to choose compassion when we're the source of the issue, the problem, the stumble, the struggle. It can be easier to show compassion to others, to be kind to others, to be gentle to others, and keep practicing it there. Practice it outside. Compassion for myself is the most powerful healer of them all. Compassion for yourself is the most powerful healer of them all. I promise you'll get used to it. Be compassionate to yourself. Be kind to yourself. Be gentle to yourself. You'll get better at it. Self compassion is a muscle to be flexed, to be strengthened. And eventually it can become your default. So I'm sticking with, not that this was the third week in the last 3.5 years that I didn't get the email out, but rather the 185 where I did, the 98.4 success rate that I've been enjoying. So the question to play with now is, what would self-compassion change in your world? How would things be different if your default became self-compassion? How would things in your world change if compassion for others became your practice? And then in practicing it there, you were able to bring more of that home. What would be different in your partnering, in your parenting, in your leadership, in your peership, in your community involvement? What changes when compassion for others or for self, or for others and for self? What will be different when you bring self compassion into your world? I know that there's so many conversations where we're hammering, now that we're coming out of the lockdown. As things again emerge and we move back to creating our new abnormal, what's different when you look at that recreation, that creation, that expansion as we move forward towards the into the last quarter of this year? And as we move into 2022 and what it brings, what happens when you look at that through the lens of compassion for self? Daniel, that's beautiful. Less pressure to do more space to only be in every moment, right? Yeah, giving yourself forgiveness for that self-care, that self-attention, that self-focus. Now, if any of you have been listening for a long time, I know you've heard me talk about this, and I'm going to throw it one more time because it's this important. We confuse culturally being selfish with being self-centered. So here's the difference. Selfish merely means attention to self. That's critical. When we don't pay attention to self, we don't self-care, we don't self-attend, we don't heal as well. Tend not to show compassion to self. Self-centered, selfish is merely an attention to self, period. There's nothing in the definition that says it's at the expense or instead of anything else. Self-centered is an attention to self, often to the exclusion of attention to others. And then way over here is narcissism or narcissistic personality or traits, right? Or behaviors. And that is the attention to self. What do you mean they're others? Now, don't confuse selfish with anything else on the spectrum, because selfish is critical. It's necessary. Without attention to self, without caring for self, we don't have the energy to be for or to serve anyone or anything else. So going back to less pressure to do more space to only be in every moment is essentially self-care. Because the pressure to do more is so often, yes, I'm making assumptions here. See, less pressure to do more and more space to be in the moment is so much about internal drivers rather than those external drivers, which give us more pressure. Phil says more flow, less anxiety. Pairing that with that opportunity to be in the moment. Like God, when we are compassionate to self, we become a self-healing engine. We become a self-healing system. And the fuel for that system is to feed back in compassion for self. And by the way, remember when I said that the way we show compassion or serve others, right? The way we treat others is a stark reflection of how we treat ourselves. Guess what? It's a self-feeding loop. The more we are able to be compassionate and show compassion for others helps us again show compassion for self and vice versa. It's a self-feeding loop, a virtuous cycle. So start the cycle and feed it on both engines. Feed it on both sides of the engine, for self and for other, and practice. It's a great way to walk into this last week of September, this last week of the quarter. Put your attention on what self-compassion can do to change your world, what self-healing can do to change your world and fuel your world. And as always, I would love to hear how this practice shifts your week, shifts your energy, and shifts you moving forward. Whether it's through the Facebook group Mindset Mondays or whether it's an email or a direct message, share. Would love to hear. And between now and next week, may you choose the mindset of compassion for self. Be well.